Welcome back, pet parent. I am so excited for today's episode. I have another incredible veterinarian to bring his wealth of wisdom to you guys today. And I actually got to meet him a couple of years ago at AHVMA. So it is my honor and pleasure to bring Dr. Bob, Dr. Bob Ulbricht to you today. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Jessica. It's great to be here.
So I would love, I mean, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about all the things. You have many decades of veterinary practice behind you, which is incredible. So I know you have so much to talk about. You use a lot of homeopathy, and I saw that you have some really amazing success using homeopathy with cancer patients. But we're going to get into all of that. What I would love to just start off so people can kind of start to get to know you a little bit is to just tell me a little bit about like your history, why you became a veterinarian, and then we'll kind of get into why you sought alternative modalities outside of the allopathic veterinary, like industrial complex. I don't know, the veterinary allopathic veterinary complex. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah,
So we'll talk about that too.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I being a vet was something, since probably about the seventh grade or something that I wanted to do. And I just followed the path and did the usual things that one does to get there. And then, and when I was in school, all the alternative stuff, I mean, it wasn't just poo-pooed. It was utterly ignored. There was no mention that there was anything other than this is the way you do things. And as far as I knew, that was the way you do things. So the first actually, several years of my practice, 4 or 5 years, I practiced conventionally. I had heard about, acupuncture when I was in school. The head of our anesthesia department, we heard Newsome acupuncture. And if you kind of talk to him, and, just hush, hush, hey, he might teach you a little bit of something. And there was a couple of my students or fellow classmates rather that did that. And we're all like, oh, yeah, you might as well stick pins in little dolls, it's all voodoo. And, that was the milieu that I learned and grew up in. And it took practicing out in the real world to kind of realize that, conventional medicine is really great. If you're hit by a truck and you need to be anesthetized and have your legs set and blah, 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 acute disease, great. But when it comes to chronic disease, it really fails. Hypothyroidism, you can't cure it. You can supply the symptoms with external thyroid hormone, or cancer or diabetes or any of those chronic diseases. All you can do is you can't really cure any of those things. You can just kind of palliate the symptoms. And I got sick and tired of that. I thought there had to be a better way. I remember I was working at a clinic at one point. One of my patients who we had just diagnosed it as a cat had feline leukemia. It wasn't doing well. And basically wasn't really any hope for this cat with conventional medicine. And I actually had the euthanasia solution drawn up in the syringe when the pet owner said to me, isn't there some kind of, I don't know, alternative medicine that we could try? And I was like, I don't know. As it happened, my neighbor was a naturopath. And I thought, oh, that's nice, that, she does some, that's cute. It's not real medicine, but, it's nice that she plays around with, herbs and things. And so I thought, well, I could ask my neighbor. I don't know. I didn't really expect anything. But okay, let's give it a try. Sure, why not? And I talked to her. She suggested some immune support, this and that. And behold, the cat got better. I was like, okay, that wasn't supposed to happen. And I started looking into it more and more and started taking classes like for humans in Chinese medicine and things, continuing education classes and stuff. And adding a little of this and that. And I thought I was breaking new ground. And then I discovered there's a whole organization out there, the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, and then other organizations like the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy and the chiropractic organizations and acupuncture organizations, all supplying continuing education. I didn't have to forge my own path. It's already, there hasn't been a lot of people forging that or following that path. We're still pretty few and far between. But yeah, there was other resources available. So that's where I started taking a certification course in veterinary homeopathy, and I got diplomate status in that, and then chiropractic, veterinary chiropractic. It took a lot of other courses in Western herbs and Chinese herbs and nutrition and nutraceuticals and blah, 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 and built a practice over the years that I've never turned back from. It's been really remarkable what stepping out of the box can do for you.
So, first of all, I just want to say there is never in a million years will I ever say anything negative about voodoo or hoodoo or anything like that because there is, please do not hex me.
Right.
I believe in it enough that your hex will work. Please do not do it. I don't know. Maybe I want to believe in it. I don't know, but I will never say anything negative about it. And because I certainly fear that somebody would be like, "Oh, really? Let's see what's going to happen."
I
But
and I don't want when I say, "Oh, I thought it was
yeah,
voodoo," that was in my mindset back
yeah,
then. That
right,
anything outside was, weird,
crazy.
silly, magical thinking, blah blah blah. And lo and behold, there's actually a whole lot of science between or behind the things that I do. I mean, people say, "How can homeopathy work? There's nothing there." Blah blah blah. Well, actually, there is interesting things there, but it's not physical things, it's vibrational things, and if you look for it with the right way, you can see it. So and people say, "Oh, well, I believe in yeah, evidence-based medicine." Well, that's really such an insult, because the implication is that anything that isn't science has no evidence against it. And the fact is, people who are doing research and publishing in the alternative journals are doing really probably better science than the people doing conventional medicine, because they kind of have, they feel like there's a higher bar for them, that, they have to prove themselves better. And so the science is actually better. It's just ignored.
I mean, if you're willing, I would actually love to dive into that a little bit because I keep seeing, and granted, I have nowhere near, I would never put myself in a class of a veterinarian. I am like humbled by what you all do. And just even conventional allopathic veterinarians, I mean, you go through so much schooling to learn so many different species of animals. Like, I am so thankful that there are so many incredible veterinarians out there. It's just like you said, if my dog is hit by a car, please, want some pain meds. If you need to put them under anesthesia to do something, let's get them fixed. But and especially looking at the human side of things, because I think that's where things happen first, and then it kind of trickles into veterinary medicine. When we look at the human side of things, and science has become a religion. I don't. This is craziness to me. And my bachelor's is in a science. It's just not in a medical science. I have a bachelor's of science. And so I learned what, a science experiment should look like. And you're kind of, when you go in, you're supposed to be trying to disprove yourself, whatever your theory is. And I don't believe that's the way most scientific studies are set up anymore. I think, a pharmaceutical company or whoever that's funding it says, this is what we have. We need to figure out a way to make it work. What can you give me? And then, data is cherry picked. And I don't know, it's an insane percentage since like the 1980s of studies that have been retracted or corrected because the science was flawed. So I would just love, I mean, go get on your soapbox if you want.
For sure. Well, yeah, people. Another thing that bugs me is when people, you talk about whatever, say the vaccine questions, and they say, "Oh no, I believe in science." Science is not something you believe in. That's called religion.
Yeah.
Science is something you look at the facts. If the facts differ from your belief, you change your belief. You don't change the facts. There was an old quote from Doctor Who, the original Doctor Who, back in the 60s, when Tom Baker said something like, as the doctor, he said, the very powerful and the very stupid have one thing in common. They don't change their opinions to fit the facts. They change the facts to fit their opinions. or something like that. I'm probably slightly misquoting him, but it's true. Yeah, it's getting back to like the vaccines. People, oh well, everyone has to be vaccinated and COVID. So so have any of these people actually looked at some of the research that's come out in peer-reviewed Western medical scientific journals, like the Lancet, the October of 2021 Lancet, or the January of 22 European Journal of Epidemiology? I mean, these are well respected what, uh, scientific journals, peer reviewed, and yet the articles, the research published in them showed that the COVID vaccine was not lowering the antigen load. It was not reducing the spread. It was not. There was no difference between highly vaccinated countries and poor and low vaccinated countries, or highly vaccinated counties and low vaccinated counties. It was not spreading, and yet people aren't looking at any of the science, and they're just saying, "Oh, I believe in science," without looking at the data. So that's just one example of course, many rainy roads we could go down.
Yeah, well, I find it to be so odd that, and I see this kind of thing on social media all the time. It's like people have no problem injecting themselves with something and not asking questions, eating a Dorito and not looking at the ingredient profile,
Right.
but suggest that they take oil of oregano when they have the flu, and they're like, "Where's the scientific research on that?" And I'm like, "What in the world?" I just think that's the society we live in. Kind of shows like where we are as a society. It shows how have become so disconnected from nature that we think we're so much more intelligent, more
Yeah.
powerful. And what you have proven in your practice is that that's really not, in my opinion, what you've proven is that that's just not the case. So,
Yeah.
what are some of, and I know you use a lot of homeopathy. What are some of the modalities that you have used in your decades of practice that you're like, this is pretty incredible, guys. Like, we need to look at this more.
Well, I mean, let me really realistically, the number one modality, the number one thing that you can do is your diet. You always start with that. I mean, there's just so much getting off of processed food, and people just, they ask, well, which brand, which kibble is best or whatever. None of them. Some are better than others, but none of them are good. And it's just like if you did nothing but ate canned goods all the time, how would your health be as opposed to eating something fresh from the produce department? And it's the same thing where there are dogs and cats. You got to start with diet. That's the number one, nutritional medicine, the number one thing. Some dear friends of mine, their dog had lymphoma, developed lymphoma, and we didn't. I mean, we started him off. I gave him some immune support and stuff. But the main thing we did, we switched the diet. Number one, get him on a raw food diet, an ancestral diet. What are wolves and coyotes eating? And it's not opening cans and bags of things, and it's not sitting around the campfire roasting their rabbits. They're eating it raw. So get back to what they're doing. They did that, but they unfortunately really couldn't afford to keep up with the immune support and all the other things, and they kind of fell back on just diet. That dog lived a year and a half on
Wow.
diet change alone.
Wow.
I mean, think how well it would have done if we could have kept up with some of the other things. But I mean, diet alone can fix so much of our pets and our health problems are because we're eating the Doritos and all that junk we put into our bodies.
So, I mean, that's pretty amazing, especially for lymphoma, because that is
It's a
known to
2 month
be
life expectancy.
pretty quick. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I too am on that bandwagon with we have to fix the diet first and foremost. Like, you cannot out supplement a bad diet. And I think we try. I think a lot of us, we try. I know I get a lot of clients that are like, they'll have a list this long of supplements that they're giving their dog, and they're good supplements. Like, they've done their research and they're really using good supplements, but they're feeding a kibble. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but
Right. It's like building a really good house with no foundation.
Right. Yes. So, okay, you started as a conventional veterinarian.
Right.
What, and you told me about the cat with leukemia. Was there anything else that maybe kind of shifted your mindset a little bit? Are there any other stories that you have that you were like, I really need to expand my horizons here?
Like another anecdote.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that the more I learned, the more I tried things, the more I saw success, the more I realized that there was a whole lot more out there than I ever was presented in vet school. Another story isn't just like springing to mind at the moment, but
That's okay.
I'll probably think of something as we talk.
That's okay. No problem. So, I noticed when I was looking at like the bio that you gave me, you pretty quickly, it looked like you ran from 8-ish years after vet school, and then you went and you learned homeopathy. So, let's start with homeopathy.
Sure.
I have to be honest, like I love the idea of homeopathy. I have tried, I actually just signed up for another course with Dr. Will Falconer. Um,
Yeah, I know
and
Will.
so yeah, I it's like I understand it, but I don't understand it, if that makes any sense. Like I know that there are different methodologies with homeopathy from talking to Dr. PJ Broadfoot. And I know that I only know enough to be dangerous because, like, you have to, from what I understand, at least the way Dr. Falconer teaches it, is you have to get like in the nitty gritty of every symptom. And when those symptoms change, you got to do it all over again. And so to me, I'm like, I would be pulling my hair out, but I would love for you to give me, like, I'm in fifth grade, explain homeopathy to me.
So homeopathy it works with the symptoms. Conventional medicine works against the symptoms. Okay, it's a very anti-medicine. If you got a fever, you take an antipyretic. If you're vomiting, you take a anti-nausea medicine. If you've got a whatever it is, anti-diarrhea, anti this, anti that. Whereas homeopathy, the symptoms are like the body deals with disease, right? So, and they're like the oil light on your car. If the oil light comes on, you can either add oil to the engine or cut the wires leading to the light. Either way, the light goes off. And things like steroids and all these, suppressing the symptoms kind of, medications are just cutting the wires. You're not doing anything for the body. So the symptoms, like I say, they're how the body tries to, if you've got an infection, it raises the temperature to cook the infection out of you. If you take something that lowers your fever, your ability to fight the infection is actually inhibited. You might feel better in the moment, but it takes you longer to get over it, or maybe you never get over it, depending on what you're doing, what you're talking about. So what homeopathy does, if you've got a fever, you give, say, something like belladonna that if you were to eat belladonna, in its pure form, or plant form, it would actually make your fever rise, your temperature rise a bit. So it actually enhances your symptoms temporarily and therefore thereby enhances your body's ability to fight whatever it's trying to cure. But then those remedies don't continue to, because they're diluted and potentized, they have a brief effect. They don't have, like belladonna is poisonous until you turn it into a homeopathic remedy, and then it can cure things that have a similar symptom picture. They say that large doses of anything kill, small doses palliate, and micro doses cure. So homeopathy is the microdoses that give the body a little nudge in that direction, kind of waking it up to say, oh, this is what's going on. Oh, this is, enhance the body's innate ability to heal. And then you sometimes get a little aggravation from that, but then you get true healing afterwards. How's that for a quick and dirty explanation?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what I understand of homeopathy is that the originator,
Yeah, Dr. Hahnemann.
I don't know if it was him or him and a bunch of other doctors, they actually took these remedies to test them out to see what they would be good for. I cannot imagine a doctor today creating a pharmaceutical and doing that.
Right, right. So yeah, the state of medicine 200 years ago when Dr. Hahnemann uh, was formulating his ideas about homeopathy. I mean, there was these things that yeah, the doctors of the day. Well, when you have syphilis, you give them mercury or whatever, and he was like, why? Where's the peer-reviewed study? Not that they really had those, and they just didn't have that kind of thing in those days, right? And so it was all kind of handed down. Oh, Dr. Smith said it worked, and Dr. Smith got it from Dr. Jones, and nobody really knows where some of these things came from. So what Dr. Hahnemann said was, well, let's find out what these things actually do when you take mercury or whatever it is. But of course, mercury is really kind of toxic, or most of these things that they were giving were really toxic. So he wanted to he didn't want to poison himself. So he took Peruvian bark that was supposed to be good for, I think, malaria, and he made it into a solution, whatever, and then diluted it 1 to 10. And he was a very, very meticulous man, and so he would make sure it was really stirred up really well. So he would succuss it like 100 times, and just kind of stumbled on this. He was just his meticulousness. There wasn't any thinking about, oh, there's something about succussion that brings out the healing properties of these remedies. He was just trying to stir things up to dilute the remedies. And then that was still too toxic. So he took what was left, and he was very, very meticulous. He'll just dilute it 1 to 10. He was always, very precise and everything. He diluted that 1 to 10 and succussed it. And he got it down to the point where it was not toxic anymore. And then he took this substance and he found that he got sort of this relapsing fever that, would kind of come and go, just sort of like the way malaria works. And he think, well, maybe there's a connection there. And that's what got him sort of started on this whole idea of these substances that produce these symptoms can cure ailments that produce similar symptoms. And from there, he tested hundreds of remedies on himself and on volunteers, and then eventually getting groups of volunteers that would take these things and write down everything that their thoughts, their feelings, their sensations, how their dreams, their whatever, the whole totality of everything. And then he looked for common denominators that was repeatable throughout at least the majority of the testers. They called them provers. It wasn't like proof as in a mathematical proof, but proving what does the remedy do. And then he wrote all these books, all the symptoms that this remedy or that remedy would do. And what you're talking about from what Dr. Falconer was telling you, that's how for especially for like deep chronic disease, you got to look at that whole constellation of pictures and pick a remedy that matches as closely as you can, so that it will resonate as closely to the individual as you can, so it will have the deepest acting effect. Now, that's all constitutional prescribing. That's for chronic disease, for really deep diseases. There's a lot you can do with acute diseases. You don't have to delve that deeply into it. Probably the most commonly known homeopathic remedy is arnica. Of course, it's the best remedy for pirates. Arnica. So arnica is good for trauma. If you take the arnica plant, it's a beautiful yellow flower, but if you were to grind it up or eat it or whatever, it would have this kind of a toxic effect where you feel kind of sore and bruised. And that's why it helps with bruising and sprains and strains and things like that. And people will, arnica cream on a sore shoulder, or take the arnica pellets when they, have a sore back or whatever it is. So arnica, you don't nearly need to know all the details about arnica. It's a pretty acute, not very deep acting remedy, but it's so useful for so many acute diseases, trauma type things. Belladonna, like I was saying, for fevers that come on quickly and your face is flushed and pupils dilated. If you have that, there's a lot of a lot of different diseases, a lot of different viruses that will cause that kind of a thing with a fever and flushed face and all that. So belladonna is often very good acute remedy for a lot of these types of diseases. If there's probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 remedies, acute remedies, that if you knew those and the kind of the basic things that they are called for, you could treat quite a few things with homeopathy. Maybe not curing cancer or getting, deep into, some of the, really uh, chronic diseases, deep acting, or long-term, lifelong things. But there's a lot that you can do with acute prescribing. It's a great way to start. And once you see how well the acute stuff works, sure, dive into some of the deeper stuff, learning more about some of the antisoric remedies and the anti-miasmatic remedies and all that you can delve into much deeper.
So, and I've heard it described as like energetic because of how diluted it is. And I think that's what turns a lot of people off to it. Like, because people don't, again, we're back to that word believe in
Right.
it. What I don't, have you come across patients like, or, pet parents like that? Or have
Sure.
you?
I had one that said to me, yeah, when I brought up homeopathy, yeah, what's the atomic number of that, or something, is it's like, well, I don't know, what's the atomic number of gravity? There's no atomic number for gravity, but you believe that gravity exists. What's the atomic number for, there's so much in this world. Photons don't have an atomic number, but we use laser light to treat diseases. One of the many things that I do is therapeutic laser treatments that pulse infrared laser light at different frequencies that will stimulate nitric oxide levels in the cells and ATP production and blah, blah, blah. And it's all scientifically proven. It's actually FDA approved, but people say, "Oh, what? Light? There was, it's nothing." Anyway, I digress. Just because something doesn't have an atomic number doesn't mean it isn't real. And even Dr. Hahnemann knew. I mean, they didn't know about Avogadro's number and, atoms and, whatever back in those days. But he still kind of knew that, boy, these things, if you dilute something 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, 12 times, there's nothing left of the original substance. And yet he found that the more he experimented with this and the higher the potencies, the more repetitions of the dilution and succussion, he found that some of these remedies, some of these things became more and more powerful. Their healing improved, and yet it was more dilute. And he did some other experiments to kind of look at, well, what's going on with that. He tried, maybe is it the dilution? So he tried not succussing, but very carefully, lightly stirring and diluting and stirring, and it didn't get that effect. And then he took substances and, made a one, like, very dilute, whatever, diluted it and succuss. It didn't have that effect either. It was the alternating dilution and succussion that somehow brought forth the healing properties of these substances.
Hmm.
So, what was the original question?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I was just lost in the story. But that it does make me think of,
Oh, yes, bioenergetics.
okay.
Not
Yeah.
to interrupt you, but
No, 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 you're good.
so yes, even Dr. Hahnemann knew that there had to be something more than the substance itself. That there was something brought into the solution from the substance, a bioenergetic pattern, a fingerprint, if you will, of the substance without the toxic effects of the substance. But there was still something vibrational there. And there's been some studies, I think, with MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, that shows, okay, there is something there in these two substances that are chemically identical. One is just the sugar pills, the milk sugar that the substances are generally put on, and one is blank pellets, and one is pellets with a remedy. And sure enough, they can tell that there's a difference there. So there is something that goes on. It's just not chemical. But there's a lot of things that go on in our world that aren't chemical.
So, and it does make me think a little bit because I know it's easy for us to say like, oh, humans ruin everything. And we ruin a lot. Don't get
Yep.
me wrong. We ruin a lot. But, when I think of like a zoopharmacognosy or, where animals can self-select, they're probably not going to select an arnica plant or a belladonna plant or something that is known to be toxic or is going to like upset the stomach or like but that human intervention was actually a good thing for once.
Yeah, I mean, animals do. Deer will eat mullein
Okay.
in the fall, right? And it's good for the respiratory system, and helps for colds and flus and things like that. And they will purposely seek that out during cold and flu season. Cold and flu season. Let me just say, so every year we have a candy holiday,
I was gonna say, yeah.
followed by a pie holiday, followed by a cookie holiday, followed by an alcohol holiday, and
Yeah,
we call it flu season.
right.
Anyway, animals will seek out medicinal plants. They don't dilute and succuss them. Whoops, I hit my computer here.
You're good.
They don't dilute and succuss them and turn them into homeopathic remedies, but they certainly seek out herbal remedies.
Mhm.
Yeah, the dilution and succussion was kind of stumbled upon, uh, but a remarkable way to turn some of these medicinal plants, which some of them you had to be careful with, like digitalis from the foxglove plant. It can kill you. It can also save you if you've got heart disease. There's not a lot of difference between the curing dose and the toxic dose. There is some difference if you're very careful with the prescribing. But that was one of the reasons. One of the things that pharmaceutical companies kind of came about was because people would take different foxglove plants would have different one that grew in the spring versus the fall, or on the hill versus in the valley, or whatever. They might have different amounts of digit in their leaves. And so when people made this remedy for heart disease, herbal remedy, yeah, some people died because it was too rich, and there wasn't really good ways of kind of measuring how much is actually in here. So pharmacies came about to standardize the dosing so that when we take digoxin, we know we're taking the right amount and nothing too toxic. But nature often has a way of balancing things. Dandelion tincture is a really good diuretic, probably better than Lasix. Lasix is a good diuretic, but what but it also has a tendency to deplete potassium from the body. Dandelion is naturally high in potassium. So it comes with this natural balance. And then what modern medicine does is, oh, what's the active ingredient? Let's get rid of all the other stuff. This is the one active ingredient. And it doesn't work that way. Like CBD, for example, now that it's become generally legal, science has been just this avalanche of research coming out about all the different things, the whole endocannabinoid system that we had no idea existed even back when I was in school. But what science does is say, oh, there's a plant that has these medical properties. What's the active ingredient? Oh, it must be CBD. Let's get rid of the THC and the blah, 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 blah. And it's CBD. And yes, CBD is good, but it's better when you have the entire complex of the 300 or so different cannabinoids and all the other terpenes and blah, 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 all those things act synergistically. And modern pharmacology taking this one thing out of a plant and calling it the curative substance is just very short-sighted.
It is very short-sighted, I agree. I've been talking a lot about that lately with colleagues and trying to get more content out around that here very shortly. So it's very, in my opinion too, short-sighted of us. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask you about homeopathy, I hear this a lot, is that you can't hurt anything with it. Is that true?
Mostly, let's say it's difficult to do any harm because it's diluted so that the toxic properties are diminished. You can complicate things with homeopathy if you don't know what you're doing, but it's hard to kill someone with it, or some, if I'm going to stick some arsenicum in their drinking water and they're going to get this arsenic. Well, no, actually, it might help cleanse arsenic from their bodies. You can't, it would be hard. But if you're trying to cure and you're kind of stumbling, you're trying this remedy and that remedy, well, sometimes this remedy kind of disrupts the case and um, complicates things, and then it makes it harder for the actual remedy to the better remedy to do its job. It's, I don't know. The best I can kind of come up with it.
Okay.
You can do some harm with it, but not a lot of harm.
Okay, gotcha. You mentioned also that you've had a lot of success using homeopathy with different cancer patients,
Yeah.
and I have not heard a whole lot about that specific topic, so I'd love to hear.
Sure. So I actually do a multi-pronged approach for cancer. I don't use just homeopathy. If you can get the right constitutional remedy for that individual, I mean, if you get the right remedy, you can cure a rainy day. It's remarkable what it can do, but sometimes there are layers and you got to hit the right remedy on the nail on the head every layer down. And it can be tricky. It can be done, but it can be tricky. So I do things that are a little bit different for cancer. Well, first of all, like talked about earlier, always start with the diet, get them off of processed food, and there's certain veggies that are particularly good for helping the body to fight cancer. The cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, those contain indoles and quercetin and things that help the body to fight cancer. So you want to increase those veggies, and also the veggies, anything with that red, yellow, orange color that shows that it's high in beta carotene, other carotenoids. Yeah, carrots and squashes and sweet potatoes and red bell peppers, things like that. So you want to diet an unprocessed raw meat and veggie diet with particularly emphasizing cruciferous and red yellow type of vegetables. So we always start with that, and then and we get them off of any extraneous chemicals that they don't absolutely need. If they're on thyroid hormone and their thyroid is totally shot and they need the hormone, okay, fine, we keep them on the thyroid hormone. But try to take them off the heartworm preventative, and probably the number one thing is don't vaccinate anymore. But vaccinating an animal with cancer can be like pouring gas on a fire. And generally the vaccines last way longer than what everyone tells you they last. So they're absolutely fine. And if you're concerned about it, run titers and see if they still have the antibodies, which generally they do for the rest of their life. So they don't need the vaccines. It could accelerate the growth of the cancer. So you get them off of all those types of extraneous chemicals. And then I'd really try and build up their immune system with, transfer factor and medicinal mushrooms, maitake, shiitake, turkey tail mushrooms, supporting the organ that the cancer is in. So standard process makes a whole slew of supplements, nutraceuticals that support each organ. So if it's in the liver, you put them on liver support. If it's lymphoma, or whatever, you do a nutraceutical that supports the kidneys or the thyroid or the whatever it is that the cancer is in. And then there's things like turmeric I use with almost all my cancer cases. Now, turmeric, this is an interesting thing. Turmeric is wonderful. It's got anti-cancer, anti-aging, anti-inflammatory. It's great stuff. It's only about 1% absorbable. It's nature's great practical joke. Here's this great herb that's healing. It does all these things for you, and you can't have any. And the 1% that gets into you is good, but wouldn't it be great to get more? And they do. There are ways of getting more in. You can add black pepper and coconut oil, and that'll get the absorptibility up to 3 or 4%, which is better than 1, but still really terrible. I found these folks in Germany that figured out a way to complex the curcumin from the turmeric with cyclodextrin, which is a ring of sugar type molecules in a donut shape, and they stick the curcumin in the donut hole. And then the body looks at it, in particular cancer cells who love sugar look at it and say, oh, sugar, I'll take that. Pulls it in, pulls the curcumin right along with it, increases the absorptibility 40-fold. It just blows all of their turmeric supplements out of the water.
Wow.
So I put almost all my cancer cases on it. It's called cavacurmin. I used to have to import it from Germany. I think there's someone in, I don't know, Minnesota or Michigan or someplace with an M that imports it now, that we don't have to go out of the country, but it's still difficult to find in this country. But I get, 10-kilogram lots about once a year. I go through a lot of it. I take it myself, honestly. I take a half a teaspoon and a little glass of water every night. Helps with aches and pains, and it's a great supplement to take. So again, almost all my cancer cases, I'll put them on that. And the mushrooms, the immune support. There's some Ayurvedic herbs like haritaki, or I can't remember the scientific name, Terminalia turbula or something like that. Anyway, that has good anti-cancer properties. And then, of course, CBD. And I typically use the one from CBD Dog Health, who, Angela produced or created that line of products, which are excellent.
I know I've actually started referring to it as full spectrum hemp extract just to just not because it's easier to say, it is not,
Right.
but because so many people hear CBD and then they just go buy the cheapest
Right.
CBD they can find. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want. I want you to get a full spectrum hemp extract.
Right. At the proper dosing too, at the proper, concentration. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, okay, it's a whole new unregulated industry.
Mhm.
And there was a paper that was published that where they went out and they bought 100 different brands, or I don't know how many, of CBD products, and had them third party tested. And some ridiculously high number, I can't remember what it was. I'm going to say 20. It may have even been more, but it was a lot of the brands that are out there. What was on the label wasn't necessarily reflective of what was in the bottle. So just because it says cannabis or CBD or whatever, you want to make sure it's third party tested and make sure that what they're claiming it is actually there. And you're right, full spectrum. I mean, there's a lot of, just not, what do you call it? Not when it's not full spectrum, broad spectrum. Okay, broad spectrum is better than just CBD, but no, you want full spectrum. You want all of the stuff that nature provided, and you want it to be organic, and you want it to be, et cetera. And CBD, cannabis extract, whatever you want to call it, at what is it, like two point point
So
2 to
the
point 0.5
THC.
milligrams per kilogram is kind of like your typical dosing for pain and anxiety, and things like that. But if you're talking about seizures or cancer, you want more like 2.5 to 5 milligrams per kilogram. It's almost like 5 to 10 times the dosing that you would use for other things. And so people going out and buying a CBD product, it may be way too dilute for what you're treating. It may not be full spectrum. It may not even be CBD for that matter.
And then you also utilize homeopathy on top of that.
I do. And if I can work out a constitutional remedy or an obvious trigger. They all started downhill, or the tumor came up right after they received 3 different vaccines in one day, and they had this strong reaction. And then right at the vaccine site, this tumor developed. Say, something like really obvious that, okay, well, then we definitely would start with a, vaccinosis remedy. Thuya or sulfur or silicea, would be the top 3. There's others that could be appropriate, but typically it's one of those, more often than not Thuya. So, we'll often start with something like that. And then if it's clear what the next layer is, we'll certainly stick with it. A lot of times it's not clear. Cancer, it's a complex disease with, different miasms interplaying and stuff, and it can be tricky to ferret that all out. So one thing that I've often done, and this is not exactly classical homeopathy, but there's a doctor from India, Dr. Ramakrishnan, whose methods that I have adopted for those cases where the constitutional remedy is not clear. He'll do an alternating remedy. One week they're on an organ specific remedy. Next week they're on a cancer nosode. And it basically stimulates the body to be aware of this organ, be aware of cancer, be aware of this organ, eventually be aware of cancer in this organ. And then, so for example, let's say bone cancer, the kind of the classic one, organ specific remedy is a remedy called Hecla lava. It's actually a remedy made from lava from Mount Hekla, volcano somewhere. And they somehow that happens to resonate with the bones. And then we'll alternate that usually with carcinosin, which is a cancer nosode, a remedy made from a cancerous tumor. So I'll alternate those two. One week they're on one week they're on the other. He also does a plussing method, which I will sometimes adapt. And the way we adapt it for animals, we'll have put a dose of the remedy in a dropper bottle and dissolve it in 11 squirts of water. And then you give a squirt, you set the timer for 10 or 15 minutes, you succuss the bottle a couple of times and give another squirt. 10 or 15 minutes later, succuss and squirt. 10 or 15 minutes later, succuss, squirt. You do that 10 times, you'll have one squirt left in the bottle. The next day, you dilute that one squirt with 10 squirts of fresh water. So you're diluting it 1 to 10 and succussing with each dose. And the next day, you dilute that one squirt that's left in the bottle again with 10 squirts of fresh water. So it's a 1 to 10 dilution every day with a lot of succussion in between, which is, of course, how homeopathic remedies are made, alternating dilution and succussion. So you're constantly ramping up the potency of the remedy. If you give the same potency of a remedy to a patient over and over again, the body gets used to it very quickly and it has less and less of an effect. So this is a way of keeping them under the influence of the remedy longer for the whole week. And then at the end of the week, you go to the second remedy with the second dropper bottle. You go through the whole thing with the dilution and succussion. And then week 3, you go back to the first dropper bottle with a fresh dose of remedy and start over. And we just, do that back and forth. And we'll sometimes see that they get better this week and little, lower energy the next week and better and lower. And if we're seeing that pattern, okay, the remedy that where they are not doing so well, we need to change that one. So it takes a lot of observation of, is there a consistent pattern to, are they just getting better and better? Great. That's what we would love to see. But if it's they're getting worse with one remedy, then we got to change remedies.
So I want to talk to you about the future of veterinary medicine, but before we do that, I just want to, this may be totally dense of me, but as you were talking, I just realized something that I don't know if I realized this before. And so I wanted to say it in case anybody listening is like still having a hard time understanding homeopathy, because I think this just made sense to me. One of the things that I've learned and that I try to pass on to other people is that, we live in a very toxic world.
Indeed.
And we are constantly bombarding the body with bad food, especially, if all the animal is eating is ultra processed diet, bad food and chemicals and fragrances in the air. And, there's smog outside and pesticides on the lawn. And so one of the things I talk about is how overwhelmed the immune system is, and it doesn't know where to focus because there's just too many things going on. And so it might focus on one thing and it's not exactly what you want it to be focusing on. And one of the things you said through the course of this is that this energetic medicine, homeopathic remedy, is kind of going into the body saying, this is where you need to be focusing.
Yes.
Is it my thought process? I don't know if this is just my thought process of like trying to understand how this works.
Yeah. I mean, that's not true of all homeopathic remedies.
Okay.
Some treat the whole body, but there are some that have an affinity for the nervous system or an affinity for the GI system. And those are the remedies that I tend to use with the cancer treatments.
Gotcha.
At least using the Ramakrishnan method. When I'm using more classical homeopathy, you don't necessarily look at that as
okay. It's so the more classical is like the like treats like kind of
like treats like, and it's still like treats like. We're still choosing a remedy. I mean, there's usually several remedies for cancer in this organ or cancer in that organ. There's several that could come up. And so you look at the symptom picture of those 3 or 4 or 5 different top remedies, and you choose one that has the similar type of discharge, the similar type of pain sensation, whatever it is. So it's not throwing classical homeopathy completely out the window. It's just a shortcut that is often useful, especially for such a difficult disease to treat. but I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. And certainly, the ideal is to, do the more classical prescribing and hit the nail on the head correct each time.
Okay,
It's not always possible to do that.
gotcha. So, one of the other things you said is to stop vaccinating. And if you really need to, somebody is, got a hair up their butt, then go ahead and titer test.
Right.
Now, I was not expecting to share this story, but since you said that, it came to mind. I recently moved and I took my dog to a new veterinarian. And believe me when I tell you, like, I called so many places. I did this when I moved the last time too. I called so many veterinary offices and just to get like a feel of who they are, what they're, because for me, a lot of times the best case scenario is find a veterinarian who is open minded enough to have conversations and agree to disagree. And so I thought, based on the conversation I had with this person at the front desk, that this was the kind of clinic I was going into. Totally not the kind of clinic I was going into. I spent the whole time with this veterinarian who got very flustered, by the way. I think because she didn't know how to handle, I was just calm about everything and said, okay, thank you, I understand, instead of like arguing or crying or whatever. And because I had submitted my dog's titer test to them before I even got there, one of the things she said was that she didn't believe, and there was not science proving that titer tests tell us anything. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that was just one of like, I don't know, 15 things that I was like, I'm not coming back here. Especially when my raw fed dog had a high bun with a good SDMA, and she did not even ask me to do a urinalysis and decided that she had kidney disease. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
I,
for bringing that up for people who are listening. The BUN or bun it's naturally higher on dogs on a high protein raw food diet. It does not mean that their kidneys are failing. That's as a normal test result for that diet. The SDMA is normal. You do not have kidney failure.
right,
But
yeah,
yes, thank you for bringing that is another big sticking point that, yeah,
yeah,
makes
yeah.
me too.
Yeah, I mean, didn't even ask to do a urinalysis. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, lady. So, anyway, that brings me to the future of veterinary medicine because I think, like I was saying, a lot of times the best case scenario is as open minded as possible, agree to disagree, use an allopathic veterinarian for your labs, for wellness checks, and then I don't know what, like find a holistic or integrative vet who does telemedicine, utilize holistic pet health coaches, nutritionists, all the things that are
So
out there and available to you. But one of the things that I had talked to you about previously was the idea of a lot of the holistic veterinarians that especially that attend like the AHVMA conferences are at that age where they are looking at, I want to retire soon. And there aren't as many younger veterinarians coming in that are like expressing a lot of interest in learning, but you guys have so much knowledge that really needs to get passed on. So there is a crisis in veterinary medicine. And I think if we could get your knowledge and others like you out there, then maybe we wouldn't we have such the crisis we have. But I don't know. What are your thoughts around this?
well, boy, it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of it is the corporate takeover of veterinary medicine. Holistic medicine, is not as profitable, at least on paper. Let's just going back to the vaccine thing. The markup on vaccines is ridiculous. It's like, 10 times what the vaccine costs. Whereas a titer test, the costs of the lab work, you're maybe doubling it or whatever. So the costs, like I make about the same amount of money per jab, whether I'm jabbing something in or pulling blood out, I'm making about the same amount of money because the titer test is a little more expensive than the vaccine.
Yeah.
Although we're only running the titer test every 3 years, so it actually in the long run saves you money. But for the amount of time that I spend, I'm making the same amount of money. But on paper, my costs, business costs, are just way higher because laboratory costs are much more expensive than the vaccine costs. And so when they do practice analyses and run their formulas and their numbers, my practice doesn't look very profitable. And even though I'm making, you know, the same amount per time, but their formulas are just off for my kind of practice. So corporate medicine doesn't care about the patient. They care about the profit. Profit driven medicine is destroying veterinary medicine. You talk about veterinary medicine being in a crisis. It's because so many of these practices are being bought up and taken over by these big mega corporations whose interest is in how can we maximize the amount of money that we can extract out of each patient visit. It has nothing to do with what's best for the patient. Now, you can make more money that way by pushing all those vaccines, pushing that extra whatever, wormer medicine every month, or the whatever, pushing all these things that they don't need and may actually be harmful to do all at the same time or in conjunction with these other things, or maybe just harmful in and of themselves. But they're not looking at that. They're looking at how much profit can we make. Now, by making that extra profit, they're able to take some of the new students and say, hey, we can give you this kind of salary. Come to join our team. And so it's harder for small practitioners, individual owned practices, to make ends meet. We gotta compete with them for staffing costs. And it's great to be able to pay the staff more, but where's that money coming from? It's coming from the health of the animals, ultimately.
Yeah.
Their health goes down so that the profits can go up so that they can pay staff that I then have to compete with. And it's a lot harder for me to stay in business that way. That's one of the things that's destroying veterinary medicine. Uh, I did just hire a wonderful vet. She's only been out for a few years. She did a externship rotation through us when she was in school, and she's come back to work for me, and I'm teaching her all these things. There are some young people who are more interested in teaching or in practicing good medicine rather than filling their wallets. And hopefully there'll be, more and more, who want to follow that path. I'm doing what teaching I can. And when she eventually, hopefully, maybe she'll take over the practice and I can maybe put all the stuff that I've learned over these decades into a book. But, there's been other people who've written good books, Marty Goldstein, and I'm blanking out of some of the, but there's a lot of books out there
Yeah.
that are good. But who's reading them? Not the vets, generally speaking. It's the clients who, like you, hopefully are going to drive business. Look for the vets who have who are open to these things. The more you go to those types of vets, the better their business is, the more they can stay in business, the more they can pass on this knowledge, the more they can compete with the allopathic medicine.
Yeah.
Go to the ahvma.org. I think it's .org, and they've got members. Now, just because you're a member of the ahvma doesn't mean you're a good vet, but if you're looking for someone who practices the kind of medicine that I practice, that's a great place to start. There's other organizations as well, like the AVH, THEAVH.org. That's the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy. Again, they have a, find a practitioner section, and they've got continuing education and annual conferences and all that. I tend to like that group. I mean, if you're looking for a really good holistic vet, I think that it's my personal bias because my original certification was in homeopathy, and I think it's generally a really great group of veterinarians. But that's a great place to start. If there's no one in your area, sure, the AHVMA likely has someone, and any of the IVIS, the Veterinary Acupuncture Society. There's a lot of groups out there that have their websites that have their referral system. Those are great places to start. And yes, we're still kind of few and far between, and hopefully there's someone in your area. But if not, yes, telemedicine is still an option until they take it away.
Right. Um, so I lost my train of thought. I just appreciate you coming on and bringing all of this knowledge with you and being so willing to share it with my audience. We are we're small but mighty, right? Like
Yeah.
the healthy pet space, in my opinion, like we are growing, but we're still small in comparison to the big guys. And so, I just do my best to bring on the best education that I possibly can. And I appreciate that you were willing to come on and be part of it. Yeah, I hope that everything goes well with your new hire, that she absorbs everything and goes and gets her certifications like you did, and just continues that legacy, because I mean we need it so badly. We are, again, I go back to like human medicine because it's this path that veterinary medicine kind of follows human medicine, though it might be a lot quicker than it has been with AI coming into things. I don't know. I saw something the other day, because in human medicine, women are just so, I mean, intentionally discriminated against for so long, and still really a disservice is being done to us every single day. But it was like at 13 years old, we put you on hormone therapy. And then you come in your 20s because you can't get pregnant. And then in your 40s, we put you on a different kind of hormone therapy. And then somewhere in there, you may need some surgeries. And, we're going to offer you an ablation now, right? So, like, we have just, I feel like this is the trajectory of what we're doing to humans and our pets alike, is just, it seems insidious to me. And I don't know how much intentionality there is, but it seems very intentional to sell you what's going to cause you the problems later on, and then sell you the solutions for those problems. And I feel like that's the same thing happening in veterinary medicine, and so many veterinarians don't see it. And that's my biggest, like, I think that's one of our biggest hurdles, is like veterinarians have to start seeing it like you did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how intentional. I think it's, more ignorance or being led by the nose from, it may be intentional, say up the line in the pharmaceutical companies, but
Mm-hmm.
they're giving continuing education and stuff to the vets who, they'll tell the vets, no, we don't know how long the vaccine lasts. As far as we know, it only lasts a year. So it's better to be safe than sorry, and just keep pumping those in year after year. And the vets just kind of buy it. Oh, okay. I guess we'll just, well, they say it was safe. Okay, well, we'll just do that. And I think they're following what they were taught, and they're following what they think is right. Maybe somebody higher up did it all intentionally just to make more money, who knows? But I think most they have good intentions. They just haven't bothered to question some things that they were taught.
Yeah. It's funny. I was literally this morning having that conversation with Dr. Ruth Roberts about how many people don't have critical thinking ability
Yeah, tell me about it.
and like how hard it is to teach those critical thinking abilities. But anyway, again, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your with at least a tiny little bit of your wisdom. And I hope to be seeing you around soon. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on that you're like, no, I wanted to say this?
Oh, I think we're good. It's been delightful being on your show, and yeah, appreciate you having me. And maybe I'll be back sometime with some other things to say. I don't know.
I'd love that.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. And you at home listening, thank you so much for being here. Please give your pets some extra love from both me and Dr. Bob this week, and I will talk to you next week.